Warning, the following video contains extreme foot faulting which may be triggering to some viewers. Discretion is advised.
Focusing in on foot faults is killing your match performance. I know you probably don't want to hear that, but before you click dislike and go watch some cat videos, do me a favor and just watch a little bit of this lesson, because I'm going to explain exactly how you can avoid this big problem and maybe think about this a little bit differently. Recently, we featured a match between Adam and Scott. And Adam, foot faults. He foot faults a lot. And we heard about it a ton in the comments. Here's a few of them. In total, we posted 3 videos with that match play between Adam and Scott. Highly recommend you check it out. Excellent match play. And those videos got hundreds of comments. And a good chunk of them, those comments, probably a quarter of those comments, were like these. People who just had to point out the foot faulting by Adam. And so I knew it was something that I had to address because I have some definite thoughts about it. So big question here that really, honestly need to address this. How much advantage is it really when Adam steps on top of the line or steps across the line? I honestly think we can really actually put a little bit of a measurement to it. So here's some examples of some of the foot faults that we just saw during the intro. And you can go review some of them as well. This is during the first set that Scott and Adam played. And so if you take a look at the egregiousness of how much he's foot faulting, oftentimes he'll just kind of step on the line. Other times it's much more aggressive. Like this one, his whole foot is in front of the line. But when you take an average of all of them, I'd say maybe by 6 inches. I mean, to be honest with you, Adam, he foot faults a lot. And some of these are really aggressive. Like occasionally his entire foot goes over the line. So at most, I would say he's foot faulting by 18 inches, like on the aggressive side. And, minimum, he's like touching the line. So that's like the actual distance that he's closing between himself and the other side of the court. And his serve, meanwhile, is traveling minimum of 60 feet. When he's lined up on the baseline, his side of the court is 39 feet. And then the service box all the way to the service line on the other side is an additional 21 feet. So from baseline all the way to the tee is 60 feet. If he goes out wide, it would be even a little bit more distance than that. And so out of a span of 60 feet, he's edging forwards about 6 inches, maybe a foot and a half, 18 inches on the really aggressive side. So when you take a look at that, here's one of his more aggressive foot faults. Ball is traveling 60 feet. His foot, the foot fault, is going at most 18 inches. So the biggest advantage that he can possibly gain here is as far as like giving himself a better angle to hit the box or taking time away from his opponents or anything like really practical like that, really substantive. We're talking about at most a 2.5% advantage. And really, his average foot fall is probably 6 inches, maybe 4 to 6 inches. So we're talking about less than 1% advantage. But here's the thing. Here's what you need to understand. This is critical in terms of like the mindset, is there's trade-offs. This 2.5% advantage comes with negatives. There are negatives to making this move. And several of you, to your credit, pointed this out. If you pause here, and I'm not going to read through all of this, but good comment here. I actually thought Adam's foot faulting was hurting himself more technique-wise. If I were his opponent, I would have been completely okay with his foot faulting. Coach Adrian, I tend to agree with you. There are negatives. If you take a look at Adam's position here, just athletically, and just kind of in your mind's eye, compare it to what you're used to seeing in a trophy pose. And in fact, let's go ahead. I didn't think this far ahead, but we'll put up like a trophy pose position of a world-class server like Serena Williams or like Roger Federer. Does he look super balanced? Does he look like he's in a strong, stable position? Does he look really athletic? He could be doing much better here. This is something that I'm sure that if he spent some time focusing on it, not to bag on Adam too much, like he's a strong 4-5 player, but this is an area where he could make improvements technically. There's no question about it. In fact, I'm sure he would agree that he'd like to improve the strength and the consistency of his serve. That may be why subconsciously he's kind of making this step, is to maybe try to make up for some of that. So you can see there's a trade-off here. By making that, especially a bigger step forwards, it actually unwinds his lower body, his hips. Several of you pointed this out in the comments. It starts to face his body forwards prematurely, which means that his upper body has to do a lot more work than it normally would have to. So that's a significant negative. If you'd like to upgrade your serve, make sure to go grab a free account at essentialtennisacademy.com, where we have coaching that covers every part of the game, including the serve. Whether you want to improve your second serve, get more power, get more spin, improve your toss, or work on your foot fault, you'll find it all here inside of essentialtennisacademy.com. Now, here's the thing. You have to understand, as the returner, the person on the other side of the net, there's pros and cons for you too. The benefit to Adam foot faulting at most is about 2.5% increase in advantage. But there's negatives, and those can be kind of significant, the technical ones. What about you? There's pros and cons. When you give the mental focus in order to actually be looking for that foot fault and potentially call it, here's the pros. Well, many of you said in the comments, as I asked the question, well, what's the big deal? Like, do you think it makes a big difference? Several of you just kind of said, listen, let's just play by the rules. Like, the rules say you're not supposed to foot fault. So why would we not just want to play by the rules? I want this to be a fair match, and I don't want my opponent to be essentially cheating. Another benefit is you make them think about it. Like, you tell the foot faulter, hey, you're foot faulting. Maybe they didn't know it, and now they're like, oh, geez, they're self-conscious and starting to think about what they're doing with their feet. And so you could say like that's a benefit or a competitive advantage. And you can also get that 2%, back by forcing them to stay back behind the line. I think we can all agree, like, this is the least important thing, right? Like a 1.5% or maybe 2.5%, like that 6 inches, that is not gonna like make or break the match for you, either direction. Hopefully we can all kind of agree on that and be on the same page. Meanwhile, it's taking your visual focus off of reading the serve, off of reading the incoming ball, and your eyes are stuck down on the court, away from your opponent's setup, away from their toss location, away from the delivery, the ball coming off their racket, while you're trying to focus on their feet. Also takes your mental focus off of things like, okay, what's my setup here for this point? Where do I want to return? What patterns do I want to play? When you're preoccupied mentally with the fact that, oh man, it's so terrible, what an amateur, they're foot faulting. I'm gonna show them and make sure I call it every single time they foot fault. Your mental focus is down on the ground at their feet, something that really doesn't have anything to do with how the point actually plays out ultimately, minus this, this 2% difference in their position. And finally, emotionally, when you let this get to you and you're like feeling super, super triggered that they're doing something illegal and playing against you, then emotionally it takes you out of the match as well. And psychologically, it's tougher. I mean, just think about all the looking back at these comments, people literally saying that they were triggered just by watching like a YouTube video of somebody who was touching the line like with their foot. Like in real life, when you're losing to that player, how much more does that bother you, right? When it's like a big deal to you and it's really affecting you mentally. So there's a real trade-off here. If you're gonna try to be a foot fault crusader and like catch all the foot faulters and like be like, I don't know, like the Batman of busting like foot faulters, like there's a real trade-off here in doing so, just competitively. So ultimately, I think you need to decide. Like, I can't decide for you. I think you can kind of see like what my perspective is here. Personally, I don't think it's worth it. In fact, I tend to agree with Coach Adrian. Go ahead, like keep stepping over the line. It's probably throwing off your balance, your rhythm, your timing. It's probably unwinding your lower body, and your serve is probably weaker because of it. It's not easy to hit a good serve from that compromised position. So you need to decide for yourself. But before you do, I think it's also important to be aware of the rules, because several of you asked about this. Looks like Adam commits foot fault on every serve. Should probably call that. Otherwise, what's the point of the rules? Like several people kind of pointed that out. Like, well, we might as well play by the rules if we're going to go out and compete and try to be, good sportsmen or sportswomen and make sure that we're all on the same page. And then Ilan So if Adam foot faults almost every single serve. When you play rec matches, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to say something? So these are like the rules as per the most current Friend at Court's publication. Either receiver's partner can call foot faults only after all reasonable efforts, such as warning the server, attempting to get an official, have failed, and the foot fault is so flagrant as to be clearly perceptible from the receiver's side. So you need to ask yourself, in all seriousness here, you need to ask yourself, is it worth all of this like drama of like warning them, trying to find an official? Oh, an official is not around. Okay, I'm gonna start calling it on you now. Like, get ready for me to like score some points, like because I'm gonna be like hawk-eyeing like your foot from the other side of the court, 80 feet away, by the way, trying to like tell whether or not their foot's touching the line or not. Like, really? Like, are you really gonna go through with all that? Me personally, like, I'll just tell you straight out, I've never called a foot fault on somebody. I've never called an official because of foot faults, because personally, I just don't think that it's a significant issue, even if it's a big, flagrant foot fault. But you need to decide for yourself. If you want to be the foot fault crusader, by all means, go ahead. But I honestly think that you should consider the fact that there's drawbacks. Like, there are pros and cons to taking it upon yourself to try to kind of regulate that rule, as it were. So one more thing before I leave you for today. It's funny, the response. When the highlights video, we published 3 videos of Adam playing Scott. When the first one dropped, like boom, 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 like comments, coming in, foot fault, foot fault, foot fault. And Adam first texted me, and after checking out the first video, and he said, so apparently I foot fault a lot. Adam didn't know, which, to be honest, I was kind of surprised at, because he really does foot fault like most of the time, and some of them pretty big. But he didn't even know he was foot faulting. So the people that he's going out and playing with aren't bothering to call it on him, even if they are aware. Scott, his opponent, has played with Adam a lot. They're like regular training partners, hitting partners. Scott didn't know Adam was foot faulting. If I had more time, I would have screenshotted the text conversation. Scott didn't know either. I was sitting by the net post watching the whole match. I also didn't know Adam was foot faulting. So, this is not super scientific, but like the 3 of us, it doesn't matter to any of the 3 of us. And I think in general, as you kind of go up in level in tennis, people care about it less and less. In fact, I think as the level increases, it becomes more and more a detriment to the server. So you can feel free to take whatever path you want on this. I wanted to just kind of sprinkle in some perspective, let you know my thoughts on the topic, and you can go ahead and decide for yourself. So I'm curious, what do you think? What are you going to do moving forwards? Are you going to just play by the book and call it every time and have a lookout, at the feet of your opponents every time? Or are you going to let it slide? Either way, I want you to choose whichever path you think is going to bring you the best results and will help your tennis the most. That's always my goal here with these videos, just to bring you a little bit different perspective, hopefully help you play better tennis. Hopefully this video does that. If so, do me a favor, click the like button, and I can't wait to see you in the comments down below.